Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's vlog from myself, Max McGillivray of Red Fox. Very privileged to be here at the headquarters of Kantar. Now, if you're not aware of Kantar, that's why I was very keen to get the time with these two gentlemen to give a little bit of background on themselves, because I'm sure you've actually seen either one of them or two of them on stage presenting about subjects of the day. But let's find out a little bit about Kantar. Can we just describe who Kantar are and what you do?
So we operate a 30,000 strong household panel that measures GB shopping behaviour and consumption behaviour, so we know where everyone shops, what their behaviour is, and then how they eat it afterwards.
Okay, how will that be of use to food companies, fresh produce companies?
So if companies want to go into retailers and advise them what the next growing trend is, or how they should be merchandising their fixture, or if they want to look internally at which crops they should be producing and which potentially high yield areas they should invest in, then Kantar data is very useful for all that.
Okay, so if I was a fresh produce or a fresh food company, why would I deploy you? Why would I deploy your services?
I guess it's to be viewed as that partner to the retailer. You know, if you want to come in and you want to show the retailer that you know the category inside out, that you know what's best for the development of the category, and for that retailer you need to be an expert in it, and that comes from knowing the data inside out.
So where I see produce being at the moment, I think it is an incredibly sweet spot. We've been notoriously poor at marketing, but because of external factors that are out of our control but to our favour, we're now seeing the march of veganism, plant-based diets, organics. And we were talking about it earlier, that the global sales of fresh produce are around the 240 billion US mark globally, and that's predicted to get somewhere in the region of 350 in the next 8 years. So fresh produce companies, if they can align themselves to a growing area sector, they are in a good spot.
I think the UK produce industry, just being very specific there, is in a brilliant place. You know, the average UK person, the average UK household, more engaged with produce than ever before. Over the last 7 years, over the last 5 years, sorry, we've seen people increase the number of trips they're making by 7. That might not sound that significant, but let me tell you, it is genuinely significant when you consider that people, as a whole of their total year, they're only increasing the number of trips by 5. So
Yep.
it's really significant.
And are you seeing particular produce sectors that are growing faster than others?
Yeah, absolutely. So berries would be a classic example, linking onto the trends that Ed just talked about. We're seeing higher engagement with berries than ever before. We're seeing about 5 extra trips compared to 5 years ago, and about an extra trip versus last year. Again, those numbers don't sound massive, but when we consider that 92% of the population buy into berries, and that's up about 5% versus 5 years ago again, that's really significant.
Okay. And Joe, what do you think is the magic dust for berries in comparison to, say, UK apples? Why are people buying berries and not other particular products?
Yeah, I think if you look at why berries are consumed compared to the average fruit, they have greater health benefits, or so consumers believe. So I was reading something about strawberries being able to cure macular degeneration earlier. Berries in particular are very strong at breakfast, and breakfast is a driving force behind fruit consumption generally.
Got it.
So they play into the right occasions, they play into the right trends. So getting your 5 a day is very prominent as a growing health need at the moment. And berries are generally seen to be healthier than the average fruit, so they're very well set in that respect.
Okay. If I think about myself as well, it's very easy to grab a handful of berries and drop them into my porridge in the morning, but you know, not to say I don't like apples, but there's an element of mess involved if I'm preparing them, or if I'm having to just eat an apple in a good old-fashioned way. So there's less kind of, I suppose, tactile, data-driven things that would suggest why berries have done really well as well.
And your advice to that English apple grower who's getting frustrated because we're all eating berries from Peru. Well, you should be eating my English apples. And especially, we're not going to say the B word, but especially with local produce, parochial produce being very important. What would your advice be to the likes of English growers? Should they be looking to adapt for this new market?
I think you need to I suppose cast your net wider. So it's thinking about new occasions, different formats, different usages of your products. I'm not sitting here saying it's easy, but there are examples of brands that have been able to expand their usage profile, if you like, so the types of dishes, the types of occasions that they're playing in, and grow off the back of it. So it's hard, but there is lots of opportunity out there, and it's not necessarily all opportunity just for berries.
And it's an interesting segue, brands. as I intimated earlier, fresh produce has been not good at promoting itself, and we've also sat in front of a number of clients who've stated that they don't get the margin returns from retailers to allow them to create a brand, and the retailers may not want them to have a brand because the retailers have enough problem with the likes of Coca-Cola and Walker's Crisps, PepsiCo, that they don't want other fresh produce companies coming up with a brand and being able to negotiate a better price. But what was your view be on the branding element? That should fresh produce companies look to create a brand, or just continue in the conventional route and just supply retailers and let the retailers do the marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can look at a couple of instances where it has succeeded. I think Berry World have had success recently by communicating messaging on their pack. Got Albert Bartlett's in potatoes, who produce distinct varieties. Yeah, so the ability to produce a distinct variety that perhaps no one else is producing yet, and then brand that, is a definite opportunity. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, do you think that fresh produce companies, as well as the retailers, perhaps in unison, should be looking to present that more so, the health elements, the organic elements, and perhaps we obviously talked at length about the likes of berries, but specific fresh produce that's going to hit those categories of health and organics?
Yeah, I think so. And if you look at what shoppers are moving towards at the moment in terms of their consumption, people are cutting out meat, so there's a big movement in meat reduction. 1 in 5 shoppers are cutting out meat, and 40% are doing so for health reasons. That puts produce in a really good place. Overall in grocery, 31% of consumption occasions are for health reasons, but in produce that shoots up to 72%. So
wow, okay.
If produce is that fundamentally well set to get more shoppers in looking for health, then yeah, we should be talking about it more, definitely.
Yep, okay. So guys, the future politically is very unclear, but on a fresh produce perspective, to me it's simple. That the cure for the obesity crisis is more exercise, eat more fresh produce. So we're in a good spot. But what's the view from Kantar in respect of fresh produce? When we're sat here in 5 years' time, what is it going to look the same? Are you going to be seeing the same similar growth rates of products? Are you going to see new entries coming in? What's the view?
Fully expect to see there some new sort of star performing sectors. You know, we've seen the rise of many sectors in the last few years. You know, it's a variety, it's a brand. Tender stem is a really good example of a product that came seemingly out of nowhere.
With a brand,
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's from my perspective, I think a really interesting thing to observe, and not being as heavily involved in the market, sit back almost and watch, will be the way that the retailers continue to evolve.
Yeah,
if you take the discounters,
yes,
and you know who I'm talking about when I say the discounters, but I won't say any names, but they've obviously disrupted the grocery market heavily in the last 5 to 10 years. The produce market is no different, and in fact they're even more set in the produce market. But the growth in the latest year is less so about getting new shoppers into store and continuing to steal. It's still an element, but it's not the main driver anymore.
But gentlemen, just to wrap up, the magic dust. If there was a produce company coming to you to say, how can we make ourselves fit for purpose for the next 3-5 years to guarantee success and guarantee our suppliers and the product we're dealing with and our end customers, what would your advice be as to how they can make themselves fit for purpose? Is it brand? Is it particular product areas? Is it organics? Is it health? What's the answer?
Well, keep it general, I suppose, from my perspective. Just because we're not talking about a specific company, so thinking about the customer's customer, so you and me in store, align with the needs that they have. So if I was selling berries, I'd be thinking about how are people using berries. What occasions are they using them for, but also what occasions could they be using them for? Because that's probably where the growth is going to come from. But then thinking about my customer and myself as well, so the retailers and my own business, I'd probably be looking for efficiencies, looking for economies of scale, looking for ways to, I suppose, preserve the margin before the product has even left potentially my pack house or before it's even sold to a consumer.
Well done. So I can't overemphasise this. If you need assistance as to where your business needs to go in a statistical database, forward-thinking approach, you need to speak to these guys and the Kantar business. Gentlemen, thank you.
Cheers, Max.